Hello everybody, it's Mr. Second Man again for the second installment of the Garand video series. Right now we're going to be doing field stripping and just kind of basic taking it apart. I'm not going to show you how to clean it right now. I'm just going to take it apart, show you a little bit of tidbits information here, and let's get started. So first we're going to make sure the weapon is clear. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the first video, I'm going to pop up a link to it and it should be there right now. But anyway, we can see this thing is empty, have nothing in the chamber, weapon's on safe. Alright, so basically the beauty of this rifle, much like any successful battle rifle, is the fact that you can take it apart basically with either primitive or tools or nothing at all. So just with your hands, that's the best part. So basically we're going to close the chamber on it. I'm going to flip it over here. Now what we're trying to do is provide a vector of force that's kind of backwards and up. We're kind of going this way with the rear of the trigger guard. And I'll unsnap it. This trigger guard, either stamped or milled depending on your rifle, has a little tension that holds it in place with the trigger guard, so, and the trigger housing. So basically you got to pull that out and loop it up, and then you pull that trigger group straight up. I just pulled it straight out of there, and this is what we call the trigger group. Now you can put it on fire and then slowly rock that hammer all the way forward. You'll see the hammer is actually connected in movement with the trigger guard. You never want to just, let the bolt just, or sorry, the hammer fly forward and hit the trigger assembly, or sorry, the trigger housing. You never want to let that happen. It's not meant to take that kind of pressure. The bolt actually hits the firing pin, or sorry, the hammer actually hits the firing pin in the bolt. It's not meant to hit the trigger housing. So you want to kind of coast it forward. Anytime you do that, you're going to want to take your brush. I'll grab it here. You just want to brush in here with solvent and oil, and then basically recock the hammer, put it back on safe. And especially for a field strip, that's all we want to do. Generally, you don't want to take this apart. The only time you really want to take this apart is maybe once in a very blue moon. Just kind of make sure nothing's rusting or replace parts. But generally you want to leave this together. It's not too easy, or it's not too hard to take apart and put back together once you get the hang of it, but generally we don't want to take it apart unless it absolutely needs it. It just puts unnecessary wear on a gun when you take things apart all the way, when they don't have to be. So anyway, jumping off that soapbox, next thing I'm going to do is I got to rotate the barreled receiver, the receiver group, out of the stock so I can try to grab the rear. I don't want to mess with my sights, so what I like to do, and some rifles will fall right out, some rifles you just tap it a little bit, and basically you have to swing out the stock and swing out the barreled receiver and unhook it from the stock is basically what you got to do. It doesn't float in and out. You just gotta, basically unhook it and bring it out. So right now what you see is the three main groups here of the M1 Garand. I got the stock, I got the trigger group, and I got the barreled receiver. So really with the trigger group, I'm going to clean what I can. That's going to be what I do for a field strip. And field maintenance for the stock, I'm just going to inspect for cracks and burning and crazy stuff, but really I'm going to leave it as is. Looks like the stock's doing alright. So I'm going to put that over there. And then what I'm going to do is put my attention towards the barrel receiver, because this comes apart a little more. So basically the first step is I have this spring, and the recoil spring that actually operates the whole gun, the rifle, is going to be inside this op rod. And this is a lot of pressure right here. This recoil spring is acting on the rod here, which is going to hit the follower rod, or the follower arm. So basically what I have to do is I have to, and notice how it's not pointing towards me or anybody else, I got to pull this out, and you'll see that follower actually swings up as I pull it back. And some rifles that may not do that. This particular one does. But I'm going to pull that, I'm just going to tap the follower down, and then I'm going to slowly bring that follower out, or sorry, the rod out with the spring on it. And there we go, there's an M1 Garand recoil spring coming out. Now the tension is off this rifle. Again, you just want to be careful. You want to make sure that this doesn't fly off. I've seen it hit somebody in the face and whatnot. You want to be very careful with this and just kind of coast it out. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a pointy object of some kind, either the tip of a bullet or a tool or anything really, a stick if we had to. And I'm going to hit the receiver pin here. If I'm shooting the rifle, it's from left to right is how I need the drift of this pin. I'm just going to take a pointy object and hit that pin. You can see it came out, and now I can pull it out. And now what we're going to do is basically remove what's called the bullet guide. Well, sorry, before we do that, I'm going to kind of bring out what's called the follower arm. Place that down. Take out what's called the bullet guide, which it actually doesn't guide bullets. This deals with your timing and how the rifle, basically moves the op rod and ejection of clips. This is your clip latch arm, which is really pivotal in the ejection of clips and whatnot on that last round. A lot of people don't understand what these parts do, but they really are vital. I'm going to flip the rifle over, and the follower is going to come out. And this is basically, what you put the bullets on the clip as you load the rifle. All right, so now this is almost field strip. We have basically just 2 more steps to go. I have the free-floating op rod and the bolt still in the receiver. Now, as a side note, the thing about this op rod, I'm going to show you when I bring it out, but the op rod is actually bent, and it's bent on purpose. Some people I've seen, they take apart their Garand and say, oh, my op rod is bent, and they try to bend it straight, or what they think should be straight, and all of a sudden they have a messed up op rod. So basically, one of the most respected and coveted jobs at Springfield Armory was being one of the op rod guys, where it was your job to take a newly made op rod and bend it correctly to the right angles. So where am I going with this? Well, basically, you want to, while you're doing this, you might as well check and see and make sure you have no what's called binding with the op rod, that it's not causing issues, or that piston head is not going to dig into your gas cylinder unnecessarily. You're not going to have timing or overpressure issues. So basically, the test is I take my rifle and I make sure it's greased and whatnot, and I keep all the pressure off of it. And what I got to do, let's see, there we go, it was off the rail a little bit. Basically, I start and I tilt it down. Got some grease jamming it up. Normally it doesn't do that, but there's so much grease. I haven't cleaned this in a while. But basically what you need to check for is you should be able to have it level, and then you tilt it up and it should like slide down. And then before you hit 60 degrees. If you hit 60 degrees and this op rod is still stuck and it doesn't slide down, that means your op rod is most likely basically binding or bent. And if you have it to the rear and you bring it down, man, I have so much grease in this thing, it's not even funny. Grease and dirt. But normally it does not do that because my op rod is to the right angles. But you should, when it's fully clean, there we go, so got some grease out. And you see that, how it's unlocking itself up and down. And I'm not going the 60 degrees, basically vertical. It definitely opens and closes far before that, and that lets me know, hey, my op rod is at the right angle. Okay, so enough on that. Now if you see on your receiver here, there's basically what's called the takedown notch. This notch back here, now the op rod should not, under normal circumstances, come out of the receiver unless you line it up with the takedown notch. You kind of pop it, you move in that direction, you rotate it, and just kind of pull it away from the barreled receiver. And you can see that op rod that I was talking about. There's so much grease on this thing. But basically, if I'm holding it like this, you're probably not going to see any bend. At least you shouldn't. And then I tilt it to the side, you'll see some bend. And basically, it bends it straight, and then it bends that way, and then it bends straight again. That is the correct angle of the M1 Garand op rod. And like I said, one of the most talented, coveted, respected jobs at Springfield Armory was being an op rod guy. Because it was your job to make sure it was correctly bent, and this isn't exactly the most precise cutting edge science in terms of an exacting thing. This is just kind of knowing how to do it and getting it done. So knowing that your op rod is not binding is very important to make sure, for the health of the rifle, I should say. Anyway, last step, I'm going to be taking this bolt out. So what I'm going to do is basically just kind of jiggle it out. Now, I will tell you, if you own an M1A, and if you've ever tried to take out the bolt when it's brand new, it's very hard. When it's brand new, if you have an M1 or an M1A, it's brand new, it's going to be very hard to take out and put back in this bolt. But if your rifle is worn or it's well broken in, this is going to be pretty easy to do that. Just comes in and comes out. So basically, as is, this rifle is field stripped. Honestly, I would not take it apart any further for casual cleaning or maintenance, especially if I'm in the field. And honestly, if I'm in the field, all these parts here that I just took off, I'm not going to be doing that if I'm in the field. I'm going to leave these on the rifle. I don't want to lose any parts or anything like that. But what I just did is what you're going to be doing for your casual maintenance. You really don't want to take it apart any further than this on a common basis. Just because that's just unnecessary wear you're putting on the rifle every time you do that. Something cool is in the buttstock, it's meant for this cleaning kit compartment, and I keep it in there just for nostalgic purposes, or if I ever had to use this and I didn't have any cleaning supplies, this is all I had. But basically, I stuffed in a nylon brush. See if it'll come out. There you go. And basically in the buttstock, I stuffed it with grease in here. I have the tool which you use to open up the gas cylinder or use it on the end of these rods, and I have a patch rod. So basically, and these are steel, by the way. Now, if you know anything about rifling and accuracy, you don't want to put anything harder than the barrel itself down the barrel. So steel rods in a steel barrel, that's not something you want to do on a common basis. But hey, if I was, zombie apocalypse and I'm running around the mountains and I need something to clean this with, and this is all I got, then hey, it works. The reason why I keep it in there is just for nostalgic purposes. I just like, like I said in part one, I like having the accessories or the stuff that was meant to go with the rifle. It gives me kind of a deeper historical appreciation for, the use of this rifle, who had to use it under what circumstances and what kind of things they were doing. Let me see if I can get this back in there. I'm gonna try to stuff this back in there. There we go. Alright, so I'll go ahead and put that back. Now let's go ahead and reassemble the rifle. So on the bolt here, you're going to have this wing on the left side. If you're shooting it, it's on the left side. And what I like to do is just put the wing above the receiver like that and just drop it in. For those of you who just bought an M1A who are trying to take it apart, you're just going to have your jaw on the floor. A brand new M1A or a brand new Garand that's never seen any action or use is not going to drop in that easy. It's just part of breaking it down. Alright, so I'm going to pull this bolt all the way to the rear. I'm going to take my op rod, and this is the piston. This op rod, by the way, man, I've devoted half of this video to the op rod. It's a very important part, but this op rod is 3 pieces, by the way. You have this piece to the right, which was, I believe it looks like it was friction welded to the actual hollow tube, and then on here they permanently mounted the piston head onto the end, and that is a separate part, believe it or not. 3 parts permanently combined as one, and that's kind of the beauty of this rifle. John Garand insisted on a full stroke direct impingement gas piston system. That's a mouthful. Alright, so basically we're going to line up the bolt and the op rod with the takedown, and there it is. And you can just kind of test it just by moving it back and forth, and we can see that this is completely functional, at least in terms of where the fit is. Now we're going to put all the parts back. I'm going to start with the bolt. First we're going to make sure the bolt is closed. Flip it over, I'll drop in the follower into the notches there, pretty simple. Now before I put the bullet guide on there, there is a little notch inside where the clip latch is, and you can actually see if I rotate it, these parts actually cooperate together. It's clip latch arm working on the clip latch, and when I put the clip latch arm back in the receiver, basically it's got to fit just like that over the part, so it acts on it like that. Sometimes you can put it together like that, it's just incorrect, it won't work. So knowing that, I'm going to put my bullet guide on the rifle, and there's a tension fit back here. Some rifles it just falls in and falls out. With mine you got to fight a little bit, it's a pretty tight fit. So I have the bullet guide assembled like so. I'll move my arm so you can see. And I just make sure that the clip latch is where it should be. There we go. And you always want to check when you have it. You just want to push and make sure that the clip latch reciprocates what you're doing with the clip latch arm. Then you take your follower arm and slide it kind of sideways through the bullet guide, and then slide it into the follower channel. I'm going to take my receiver pin going from the shooter's right to left, and I just push that pin through until I have all the parts together. Now, just as a side note, just for your information, the op rod will not come free of the rifle unless one of two things has happened. Either I take out these parts that I just did, or I remove the gas cylinder assembly. Because if I have the gas cylinder assembly on and I have these parts assembled back on the receiver, this op rod will not ever come free unless it's out of spec and it runs off the receiver, which is really bad. But for a normal M1, if this is assembled and the cylinder is assembled, then the op rod is not going to come out. I have to do one of two, or both, but I can't expect the op rod to come out unless I do one of the two. Alright, anyway, we're going to make sure that this is greased up. Under normal conditions, we're going to throw this in there. The more grease, the better. Honestly, I don't think you can over grease, and if you do, the rifle will just sweat it out and keep functioning. So I apply the pressure. Again, I'm being kind of careful about where this is pointed. Now, it is not fully, I don't know if you can see the detail, it's not fully in battery yet. I just got to lift up on that follower. There you go. And now it's in place. And I can check, I can just kind of do a basic up and down. This rifle is, the barrel receiver is back together how it should be. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stock and my barrel receiver, and I got to kind of pivot it. I got to lock it in and pivot it back and lock it in place like I did. And the next thing, when you do that, make sure that you don't hit the wrong sides here, because you can with the receiver, you can hit the sides of the stock and damage it. So just make sure it's lined up before you apply pressure. And then I like to use on the right side of the trigger housing, there's a channel. I line that up with a channel, the mating channel in the receiver, and that's how I know. Also with the stock, I can kind of see where this floor plate is, the trigger housing. I can put that on the stock, and it shows me basically where I'm going. And I basically do that last clip in to make sure the tension is set on this rifle. Now we'll do what's called a function check, where I basically ensure that the rifle is functioning. So I'll make sure it's empty. And again, we want to, instead of pulling it, I see too many people pull it like this. Basically, if I pull it and I let go and I have a slam fire, this bolt is going to hit me right in the hand. So generally with this rifle especially, it is somewhat prone to slam fires if you're using the wrong ammo or your primers aren't exactly up to snuff. Basically, I always want to pull this op rod like this, because if it comes back and it slam fires, that bolt just brushes over my hand. No harm, no foul. That's just kind of a minor note as well. You belt-fed guys are going to know what I'm talking about. You pull it back. Okay, there's nothing in there. We can see that. I'm going to go ahead and put the weapon on fire. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt forward. Point it in a safe direction. I'll discharge the weapon. And I'll leave the trigger discharged. I did not let go of that trigger. That trigger is still discharged. I'm going to go ahead and rack the bolt. Not fully, because I don't want to put the bolt to the rear. I just want to rack it enough to charge it. Okay, still have my finger on the trigger, it's still being held down. When I let go of this trigger, there should be a minor click. And then I'm going to pull the trigger again, I should hear a big click. There we go, now we know this weapon is fully functioning. Another thing that's kind of nice is, if I'm looking at this rifle, I have this indent right here. I can actually, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but I can see the hammer in there. And that lets me know that the weapon has been discharged. Now you should never rely on that, because there could still be a round in the chamber and it could slam fire under a crazy scenario, but you just know, if you see that, it lets you know, hey, this rifle's discharged. But more importantly, if you look in that channel and you see nothingness, you just see black, you don't see the hammer at all, that lets you know, hey, this rifle is actually cocked, it's charged, it's ready to go. And you can see, hopefully you can see that. And now you can see the hammer. So just by looking at this rifle, most of the time you can tell that, hey, that rifle, you know, it's either cocked or the hammer's not cocked. You can tell just by looking in that channel. Don't know if that was intentional or not, but it sure is nice. But either way, you shouldn't trust it. You should always, you know, check and just kind of see what it looks like in there. And basically that's your basic field strip of the M1 Garand. Should not really go any further than that for basic cleaning. So I hope this video helped, and we're just going to go in depth for some more video series. Alright, thanks for watching.